You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palm down. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. You know, we live in this crazy world where there's so much going on outside of you. And people tend to get driven by fear and anxiety, panic and worry. And then they carry that. And then, in their own beautiful way, they spread that. So if you have anxiety, and fear, panic, and worry, it's one thing to observe that, address that, and deal with that. But please don't create that in others. Because lots of people don't live with panic and fear and anxiety and worry. And I'm not just talking about us privileged folk, right? Of which I am in every box, privileged. Right? I'm talking about not just that. Little anxieties, little stresses, little worries, things going on every single day that everybody's so panicked about. How's this going to happen? How's this going to work? How are we going to get this done? Believe it or not, everything will happen without your desire and effort to try to control it. I know that's shocking to many of you. What would actually happen if you stopped trying to control something and you just allowed things to happen? Everybody has their own mess to deal with. They have their own level of stress and anxiety and anger and fear and sadness and depression. They don't need yours dumped on top of them. It's really a beautiful gift. The Buddha said the greatest gift that we can give, dana, the practice of generosity, the greatest gift that we can give is the Dharma. And I don't mean like handing somebody a Buddhist book. I mean sharing the practice with them, and I don't mean by talking to them or teaching them about the Four Noble Truths or Eightfold Path. I mean by actually bringing practice into your life. So for those of you who are practitioners or consider yourself practitioners, then practice. Meaning, stop creating fear and panic in everybody else, around everything. We have opportunities to create change in our minds and our hearts and in the world. And I'm a huge fan of that, right? For those who are maybe brand new to Buddhism, there's often this idea that Buddhists just kind of sit around under a tree and don't worry about anything, right? I'm a huge fan of Thich Nhat Hanh, who really coined the phrase engaged Buddhism. And so this practice is about engaging in the world to create beautiful change. Not checking out, not ignoring, not pretending the world isn't a mess, the world isn't on fire, because it is. But your anxiety doesn't help it. Your fear doesn't help it. Your panic doesn't help it. What helps is the practice, as the Buddha taught, of compassion and wisdom. But when you're so lost in fear mode, panic mode, anxiety mode, you just freeze. And you operate from that place. And then every person you come in contact operates from that place because that's what you've dropped on them. So, when you start to see this, to actually look for this in yourself, what happens is you begin to then see this in others. How without even knowing it, just so many of our everyday casual interactions, everyday casual dialogues, everyday casual conversations just create so much fear in your mind from what others tell you. But we're so used to doing it that we don't even think about it. And then we just pile that on. We come back. And then we just spend 20 minutes and all we've discussed is all anxiety and fear and worry. There are places for that. Therapy. Maybe a best friend, a partner, right? But try to remove a lot of that out of your dialogue and see how that would change things. But again, it comes back down to the one thing that most people have a very difficult time with, which is this illusion that we all create in our mind that we have some sense of control over things. The world will go on just fine without us. It has for endless time and it will for endless time. So while we're here, try to make a positive difference, but without control, without force. I think for me, that's been one of the greatest things I've learned with Buddhist practice. You know, for 17 years of leading this place, you know how much I worry about this place? Zero. This place could shut down tomorrow. It could be here for 1,000 years. That's not my concern. My concern is the practice. And if you practice, this place will be here. But not because I panicked about it or worried about it or lost sleep over it or anxiety over it. You'll be fine. With or without me. With or without all of us. You know, 50 years from now, we'll all be gone. For the most part, well, this little one will still be here. It's our future master. See, I hope you're taking notes. I see. That's good. Some pretty good notes, actually. Yeah. So, all right. So with that, we'll sit. For those who are maybe sitting for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you. Oh, and for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin with meditation. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you are seated, just trying to sit as comfortably as possible. If you need to move, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator. You're not going to empty your thoughts. You're not going to think nothing. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important for the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands, or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind, and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of your life that is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then begin to make changes in your life. Too many people run to this stuff as if it's going to save them. This practice doesn't save you, it doesn't fix you. You save yourself, you fix yourself. And that requires effort. And that's not easy. But that's why it's a practice. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world outside of us, life gets simpler. But that takes time. So we keep working at it. Every day we have opportunities to bring this practice into our lives, regardless of what we're doing. To bring loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, understanding, forgiveness. These aren't just words on books. The practice is to do them, to bring them into your life, starting with yourself. So many people suffering and the way they are towards others comes from their lack of love and compassion towards themselves. And so if you have anger and hatred towards yourself, then it's going to be really difficult to interact with other people in a kind, gentle way. So it starts there. And when we can honestly look in the mirror and say, okay, this is who I am at this moment, and work to change that. I mean, unless you don't need changing, I'm sure there's someone in here who's got it all figured out. I always say we should just stay home and be watching cartoons or coloring right now, live and in action. It's totally oblivious, it's the best. But so focused, like we're not even here. That's the practice. It doesn't, not one care in the world about anyone around. Right? Super focused on coloring the most beautiful looking something. What are you drawing? Is it a rainbow or a house or both? No worries, you can get back to me on that. Or you don't even have to answer the question, just keep drawing. How old are you? 6. Not a care in the world about any of us in this room. Just so focused on drawing. That is a lesson for us all. Even in places like this, everybody's so worried. What other people think about them, how they're sitting, how they're breathing, how they're coughing. Whoever's coughing, I hope you're okay. But I always, so this isn't meant to embarrass you. I don't know who it was. I'm looking down here. I have no idea who it was. I hope you're okay, whoever was coughing. But the funny thing about coughing in places like this is, and you see it whether somebody blows up and coughs or just kind of coughs a little bit. It's like, for some reason, people are afraid to cough during meditation. Just cough. Because when you close your mouth and try to cough as if you're not disturbing someone, we hear that also. And then you're suffering even more. If you just would do one loud cough, if you're sick, go home. I get that. But if you just have to clear your throat or whatever, just do one cough and clear your throat and be done with it. Otherwise, we do half coughs for 7 minutes. We can't breathe. Everybody else listens to us for 7 minutes. Then we get up, we walk outside, we do a full cough, and everybody has now listened to that for 10 minutes. I love it. This has gone on for like 17 years. It's my favorite thing in the world. When somebody coughs, it's such a perfect example of how there's fear and panic and anxiety and worry. Oh no, God forbid somebody should think I'm meditating wrong because I coughed. When you cough, you cough. When you sneeze, you sneeze. When you move, you move. This is life. If the coughing bothers you, that's your mess, right? If the sound of coloring of children bothers you, that's your mess. Don't drop your mess on others.
What about cell phones?
Cell phones are the same. Phones ring, dogs bark, kids make noise, and people cough. This is life. If you want to answer your phone when it rings, answer your phone. The problem is people think that meditation is some escape, as if you're going into some tunnel. The problem is you're living your life in a tunnel. Come out of that tunnel and wake up to all the mess. I'm having to keep my language pure right now because of the 6-year-old. Wake up to life as it is. Stop living in fear of how you think it is supposed to be. This is why we're suffering. We have a construct, an idea in a box of how we think everything should be. And the reason I try to drive these things home so much in a place like this is because this is places where we need to learn that stuff. Because if you're new to this stuff, what I want you to understand is as soon as we're done here and you go back outside into your world, we're all going to roam around wondering what everyone else is doing and if it's okay with us. And judge and critique and be bothered and annoyed and frustrated. It's what you do all day long. Again, no offense to any of you who don't do that. All right? But that's the world you're living in your head, and then you don't know why you're miserable. And you go to bed at night and you can't sleep, you don't know why you're exhausted. Because your head has been driving you crazy all freaking day. Thus the practice of meditation. Or coloring. Present time awareness, it's called. This is the Zen practice. Another phrase for it is present time awareness. Aware of what is present in every single moment, beyond what you want to be present in every single moment. This is the practice. And if you can get closer to the reality of what's actually happening, then you can just deal with the reality of what's happening, as opposed to all the stories that aren't reality. It's like we're fighting things that aren't there. At least battle what's real in your life. Start there. Do that for many, many, many years. And slowly things might change. So with that, I'll pause. I'll open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are. If you have any questions, put them on the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll go to questions. Yeah.
My husband and I went to the IMAX at Fleet and we saw this video, Deep Sky, and it was absolutely awesome. And it made you realize it's been billions of years since, I know how insignificant we are and our problems may seem big, but compared to that. But we left and my husband was like, well, I wonder if we were seeing what made the Big Bang happen? And I guess it goes in the file of things I will never know. But does Buddhism have a theory about how all this started?
Yes. Oh, you want me to comment on what it is?
I like answers.
So let me just explain Big Bang theory to
What made?
you. You're better off just watching the show. I still think it's one of the most brilliant shows ever created. Which is really cool in the beginning, when they go through the whole universe is in a hot dead state. If you watch those images, there is a little image of the Buddha. It's kind of cool. And everything else in there, they packed into like 30 seconds. But Nagarjuna was a 4th century Buddhist philosopher, considered one of the wisest to, kind of second to the Buddhist teachings in wisdom. And he says very clearly, there's no beginning and no end. So there's your answer. You cannot, the law of karma, law of cause and effect, you cannot have something come from nothing. Impossible. Everything comes from something. Everything. So, there's your answer.
Thank you.
Simple, right? Who said thank you? It doesn't matter. I heard thank you. You're welcome. I just wanted to acknowledge the thanks. Yeah. Glad I could clear that up for you. All these years you've pondered, You didn't actually think I was going to give you an answer, did you? So, yeah, but if we think about, what was the name of it?
Deep sky.
Deep sky. Like you said, billions of years, right? And yet we wake up and we're like, does my shirt look okay? Is my hair all right? What are the absolute strangers who have no idea who I am going to think about me? That's how we spend our time. This idea of you can't have something come from nothing. So forget for a moment that teaching in response to, the Big Bang, and just think about this in your daily life. Ever been upset with someone? Right? Do you think the person that you're upset with who did something that you think hurt you, do you think they're suffering at all? Do you know anything about them or their life? Their suffering comes from something, just like our suffering comes from something. So you can't have something come from nothing. But when we are mad at someone, when we're angry, when we're hurt, and we simply point a finger and we say, they did this, we don't know anything about they or who they are. I'm not suggesting what they're doing is right or good. Again, this is not ignoring so much ignorance in this world. It's trying to understand, where is it coming from? And most importantly for me with this practice is understanding that you may never get an answer to where it's coming from. If someone is acting out of what I would consider ignorance, it's not my job to understand exactly and pinpoint what happened to them that led them to be that way. So for me as a practice, it's to understand that I have no idea what happened to them that led them to be that way. That is the practice. If someone does something that I don't like, it's not my place to understand every single moment in their life. That's impossible. But at that moment, all I understand is what they did hurt me, and then boom, I hate them. And then for 50 years, you lock them away and you think they're miserable people because they didn't do what you liked. And what they did might have been miserable, absolutely. But we don't know why. We don't know how they were raised, what they were taught, what abuse they went through. Nothing. Just like when we've done things that hurt people, nobody really understands why we did that. So, this practice of understanding that you can't have something come from nothing really is life-changing, because it allows you to set down so much anger and hatred and resentment that you're carrying towards yourself and others. So, what else? Questions? Yeah.
So, I think I have a question about generally spiritual pitfalls. Like, I see all these ancient art forms, Eastern art forms, that somehow they feel very spiritual practices to me because maybe it's getting connected to something bigger than you, learning them and getting back to them. It's kind of like this practice, getting back to some sort of practice and then also I see some artists or that they get into this competition and that ego kicks in maybe so I guess I'm asking what do you think maybe in your journey or what do you recommend in our journeys be careful of around the pitfalls in this process,
I could talk for hours on that. The question, just to kind of paraphrase for those who maybe didn't hear it, is to sum up, your view of maybe old iconography or images of spiritual figures, thinking that maybe they have some spiritual journey, and then even more modern. This is how I'm translating what you said into my head. Even more modern day, when you see things that look spiritual, is it real or is it fake? Right? And what are the pitfalls to kind of watch for on your spiritual journey? And what are the things that I've learned from this path, or what do I recommend that you do? So first and foremost, there's a great movie I suggest you watch. It's called Kumare. Kumare. You can Google it, write it down, whatever. I think it's still on Netflix, I'm not sure. But if you have to pay say again?
It's free.
YouTube? Yeah. So Kumare. And I'm not going to give it away, but it is about a young man from India who is doing a master's PhD, I forget, probably a PhD, but doesn't matter, at Princeton or somewhere, also doesn't matter. And he's doing his thesis on the history of fake gurus in India. So during this process, he decides to grow his beard long, invite his two best girlfriends to move from East Coast to Phoenix area, get this large trident staff-looking thing, and call himself the great guru Kumare, and build a following. I will leave it at that, as far as the movie, right? But the movie addresses 100% your question. The one thing I will say, just as a caveat for those who maybe don't see it or won't see it for whatever reason, the thing about him through this movie is he's very genuine, right? It might sound as if he then went to manipulate and take advantage of people, and that's not the intention. I point that out mainly for those who won't see it. He wasn't out there to take advantage of people. He actually went very purely and genuinely with a very deep message that he wanted people to learn. He was very genuine. As a Hindu practitioner, I believe himself, it was very important to him. So he wasn't just messing with people. He was completely. He was completely lying to them. But his intention was really pure. So I'll leave it at that. But the other thing I'll say is that, for me, in my practice, yes, you can look at images like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You can look at Jesus, you can look at all, Buddhists refer to as a Bodhisattva, fully enlightened being. You can look at all these, Hindu gods and goddesses and angels, whatever you want to call them. And to me, as a practitioner, I'm not trying to become them. I'm not trying to worship them or praise them, or I respect them, I admire them, I see them just like other people that I would admire and respect. And I see them as reminders and moments of practice. Not to get lost in, Chogyam Trungpa calls it spiritual materialism, where you can get lost in the images of a religion. Buddhism as well, making sure you look Buddhist enough, that you have enough Buddhist stuff, that, all the kind of stuff that comes along with Western culture. We like our stuff. And this is a practice. For me as a Zen practitioner, it's very much the opposite of all of that. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Pay incredibly close attention to every single thing you do. And that the world as it is, like literally right now, this is as spiritual and magical as it gets. There's nothing beyond this moment. There's no great spiritual anything outside of you taking a bite of food. That's it. So anything or anyone, to your question, what are pitfalls? Anything or anyone that presents more than that, I'm not one to say it's not more than that. I'm one to say, to me, what I learned from the Buddhist teachings, which is, don't believe this stuff because he's saying it. He was just a dude. Wasn't a god, he was just a guy. He said, hey, if you don't think loving kindness and compassion will make your life and the life of those around you better, then by all means, don't be loving and kind. He didn't say that, actually. I'm paraphrasing it. But he did say, question everything I'm saying and put it into practice. And if it works for you, great. If not, abandon it. So I think that's really important, to not get lost in the, for you as a practitioner, when you see those kind of red flags, like, well, this is some weird stuff, challenge it, question it, push back on it. Don't believe it just because somebody says they can do it, Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it probably leads to a million more questions, but, we only have an hour, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
There's a difference between the concept that I have about radical acceptance from Tara Brach and engaged Buddhism. Right? If an engaged Buddhist tries to make the world a better place, but in my mind, like, radical acceptance it is what it is, right? So how do you conceive those apparently opposite ideas, and how do you marry them?
Yeah. So the question is around Tara Brach and others who refer to the phrase radical acceptance. It was the title of one of her books, bestseller, millions of copies sold. It's kind of like, I love the Dalai Lama's book, also a bestseller, millions of copies sold, titled The Art of Happiness. And Americans are like, I want that. Same thing, radical acceptance, I want that. And then you have the flip side, as you said, which is the engaged Buddhist practice, right? So what I would suggest, and your question is around how to kind of, bring those together, or what seemed to you as opposite. Radical acceptance to me is not at all the opposite of engaged Buddhism. I, as a practitioner, actually see radical acceptance as the first step of engaged Buddhism. Radical acceptance to me doesn't mean that I see racism and I just say, well, there's racism, I accept it. Radical acceptance to me says, there is racism, I want to understand it. I want to see where it's coming from. I want to see what it does in the world. I want to see where my privilege is and the role I play in it. I want to deeply investigate from this view of radical acceptance, which says, this is here. Not denying it, not ignoring it, not pretending that I don't have a play in it, that I don't have a role in it, because I do, right? Accepting the situation for how it is, not, which is kind of how you were phrasing it, and that's why you asked this question, not, and this is also a very common misconception for many people who begin to learn about Buddhism, is that Buddhism says this radical acceptance thing is if it's something we're just supposed to be like, yeah, that's it, cool. No, that's it. Now what can we do to create change? And from that place of radically accepting how life is, we then begin to engage with it, but from a place, what I see as true radical acceptance ties into what I was talking about earlier, where we see if, again, just sticking with racism, for example, if that exists, which it does, right, can I begin to see how and where I can bring love, compassion, and wisdom into the world to fight racism, not to accept it. Radical acceptance, I see as accepting the truth of what's actually going on, and figuring out how I can create change with wisdom and compassion. Which, as you know, what people tend to do very often, in kind of from an activist standpoint, is we fight, but from a place of anger and hatred. And again, as you've heard me say many times, Martin Luther King nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work around social justice issues, because he fought alongside him and everybody else to create change, but without hate. So accept it and then work your butt off to change it. Yeah. What else?
Kind of a combination of two things you talked about. The first one being like when someone does something, you don't understand why they did that thing, and kind of just accepting that you're not going to know every single thing about them that led up to that. But then also with the engaged Buddhism concept of like, I want to ask questions
Sure.
to figure out why it happened, with the potential of explaining to them why it happened. And this is like for every type of different relationship there is as a human, with the potential to help. But then also, like, you kind of mentioned, like, just accepting. And so I'm just, like, what are your views on, like, getting to know why something happened?
Yeah, and even in my mind, when I said that, I felt that it needed a little more clarity, and that's what you're actually picking up on. So when I say just accept that you'll never understand, I'm talking very broadly. Like, the Big Bang Theory, you know? We're not going to understand why every single person in this world that is racist is a racist. Not going to understand it. But what we do have the potential to understand is why many of them are. Or more specifically, in your life, maybe you're having relationships, family, friends, loved ones, people, you know, that are that you're intimately connected with in some way. I'm not suggesting that you don't explore to begin to understand more. So when I said that, I'm not meaning to sound as if asking more questions to learn more is a bad thing or that you shouldn't do it. I just kind of presented it in a way that we're never going to understand everything. And even if you sit down with the person that you love the most in the world and you ask them questions for 30 hours straight, are you still going to understand everything? No. So ask those questions, explore, especially when it is something that is so present and immediate in your life that you believe really requires some very deep, thoughtful investigation and understanding. But for me, when I look at, you know, all the social injustice in the world, I'm not going to understand all of it and where it all started and why it all started, or, you know, how it all has happened. And I could spend the next 50 years trying to understand all of that, or realize I'm never going to understand it all, but I can still do things right now with the limited knowledge that I have to try to make a difference. You see the difference kind of between the two is like a broad global issue versus people that are very present in your life and you have that opportunity. Yeah, investigate, ask away. And hopefully they'll share honestly and authentically and genuinely to really help you get to the bottom of issues that are occurring. Because that conversation, that dialogue, that I think authentic interaction is critical in more personal relationships. Well, in all relationships, but especially in, you know, relationships with people that we know and love. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
So as you were just speaking about compassion and asking questions, you know, to someone, what if in my action of asking them, if I'm supposed to try to be more compassionate, what if it hurts them?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I don't want to create hate myself because I might not agree with them. So, but really, I guess what I'm getting at is like, how do I separate that and understand myself better to not hurt someone like that?
Yeah.
Just by investigation.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a great question, but also one that there are a million scenarios that occur. So all I can offer is that, you know, Buddhist teachings talks about the two wings, they say, are wisdom and compassion. And what we do should come from a place of pure intention. So the first stage is in asking questions about, you know, again, let's just assume for conversation's sake right now that it's someone that you know and love and care about and you're maybe having challenges with. Your intention in asking questions And I'm just making shit up as usual. The kid's gone, so I can go back to saying something. When it is someone that we know and love and care about, and we're asking them questions to try to figure out something that's going on, is our intention really to understand? Again, I'm not insinuating anyone here would do this, but is our intention in asking these questions really to listen and understand? Or are we asking questions? You ever asked a question where you're really not asking a question, you're telling them something? You know? Jewish mothers are great at that, you know? When we ask a question, what is the intention behind it? Is it really to create healthy dialogue? Or is it just because we want to know for us? And the second part is really kind of an unknown to your question, which is when you begin to ask questions, you don't know how they're going to respond. So that's why if you go into it with a pure intention, and hey, this is why. This is what I want to understand. This is what I want to listen. I want to support. That will very often get met with resistance, and you'll get shut down. And anyone dealing with, we've had a recovery program here for 15 years. A huge percentage of people that come to this temple are addicts, recovering addicts, family members, loved ones of addicts. And they'll be some of the first people to tell you when you tell them you want to understand them, they're going to shut you down. Not everybody wants to share. And so if you go into it wanting to understand and they shut you down or they're getting angry, then part of your understanding is to recognize, okay, this isn't working. This investigation. Because if it's really about them and us together, and they shut you down and we keep pushing, then maybe it's no longer about them anymore and it's really just about us.
No longer accepting.
But again, there are a million scenarios in that situation, and I'm just speaking very generally. So it's, I think, a case-by-case basis where you're honest and authentic with why you're asking the questions, you're upfront about why you're asking the questions. You get shut down, and there's not always anything you can do about that. And if you're asking them questions and you're just pissing them off, then is that really helping,
Right.
Then they're just cultivating more anger. So usually you'll know. Do one more if anybody has anything. Yeah.
I know this isn't helpful and I can catch myself doing it, but it's when there's a mistake and I know if I had done one small thing differently, then that wouldn't have happened. Like, I recently got in a really bad accident, and had I left 1 minute later, it wouldn't have happened. And then that same night, I washed a red dress with all my white clothes. And if I had just been more conscious of going through my laundry, that wouldn't have happened. And it just feels like over and over again, it's like these little things that just keep happening, or big things that if I had just made one small thing. And I know that isn't helpful thinking, and if I'm present in the moment and slow down, then maybe I'll be more conscious of those decisions. But I guess it's just I'm looking for a way to stop that cyclical thinking. Had I just done this one thing different, then everything would have been different after that.
Understood. And it would have. So you're not wrong in that thinking. My suggestion, though, is to not view that thinking as wrong. It's absolutely correct. If you had left 1 minute later, you wouldn't have been in an accident. If you hadn't washed your red with the whites, you wouldn't have had a bunch of, I guess, what do those colors make? Red and white, right? If I hadn't done that one thing, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. If you hadn't done a million positive, what you would view as positive things, you wouldn't have all the joy that you have in your life. The challenge is you're picking out 2 things that you think are bad. Have you picked out the 9,000 things that were good?
So I'm working on like there's been so much good that's come out of these things. Well, not my laundry, but like out of like, you know, getting in an accident, like all the good I'm like receiving from people without asking for it. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on.
So what I understand. What I'm suggesting is stop looking at the things that happen as good or bad. They're just things that happen. You can spin them. The problem with this question, I'll close with that, is you're trying to spin it. It's kind of that expression, everything happens for a reason. Doesn't fly in Buddhist practice, to my understanding. Everything just happens. We give it a reason. And when things happen that we don't like, and I'm not suggesting a positive outlook in life isn't, I mean, in a very conventional sense, be positive, spin things as positive as you want, because that'll help you through your days. But now let's take all of that and throw it in the trash for a minute. Stop spinning things. Just recognize shit happens. Why do we have to spin it into a good or bad story? The real challenge is to do what you actually said in your question, which is I realize if I had just been more mindful. So your accident wasn't just because you didn't leave a minute later or a minute earlier. That also occurred because you turned 16. That also occurred because you had a car. That also occurred because you had a driver's license. That also occurred because you live in San Diego. That also occurred because you wanted to go wherever you were going. Things just happen. All of those things also get you everywhere. So there's this overwhelming desire for us to try to justify everything in life, to make it all good. You know this well enough from the years you've been looking at this stuff. What is the first thing the Buddha taught? Life is filled with what? Stop trying to ignore that teaching. Then you're just going to beat yourself up. And you'll beat yourself up for 5 minutes longer. Whereas if you dropped it 5 minutes earlier, that's 5 minutes less that you could have actually been pleasant instead of beating yourself up. Things just happen. The practice, as you know, is to continue to be mindful of everything we think, everything we say, everything we do. So the likelihood of us creating a safe, healthy environment increases, but we don't know that that's the case. You know? You could have thrown your clothes in the laundry the right way and somebody else could have come in and dropped a bunch of red stuff on top of your white stuff and you still would have been a mess. But we were very good at like creating this perfect little scenario that we think was supposed to be perfect. And that happens with everything in our lives and then we're miserable. So shifting the way we see that, I think, is helpful in everything. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm the Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We have different classes every night, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday, 4:30, we have a food distribution program where we prepare gourmet vegetarian meals and we feed people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life sucks, just make sandwiches and feed people who sleep on the sidewalk. It tends to put things into perspective. If that doesn't work, keep going back until it does. Everything's back open again for those who missed it. Downstairs, Buddha for You is open. The downstairs meditation hall renovations are done. The flooring will be laid around the 20th, and then we'll wait 2 more weeks for that to then get sanded and stained. So probably second week in August, we'll actually be using that space again down there. It's beautiful. We're definitely always happy to be done with renovations, but we're excited to use that. We've in essence doubled the size of our downstairs meditation hall, which holds most of our recovery classes. So we're really happy, and thanks to everybody who helped make that happen. A couple more things. One is, Greg, you want to come up here?
Okay. Only because of you.
We have a birthday. 46 today.
And then some.
And then some.
And then some.
Can we sing happy birthday to Greg?
Sure.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Greg. Happy birthday to you.
And you still could donate to the Dharma Bum
And we
in
don't
my
talk
name?
money at the temple. Thank you very much. Have a seat.
Contribution.
Have a seat.
I'm short.
Have a seat.
$200.
Have a seat. 17 years. We never do that. I will yell at you even on your birthday.
Well, next year I'll remember.
Yes. I'm giving you shit. Thank you. We love you. You're the best. We're glad you're here. It's people like you that make this temple so special. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for allowing this space to be as beautiful as it is. So we appreciate you.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So love you, man. And on that note, also Pride Parade is a week from today. So if you have not heard, I'm not sure how, we are walking in the Pride Parade. You can go to the website, click Pride Parade. There's also a flyer on the wall. Hit the QR code. Also that Monday, we will be cleaning up the Pride Parade, or the Pride Festival, I should say. That's the most challenging time they have, which is cleaning Balboa Park. So feel free to sign up for that as well. Monday morning about 7 a.m. we'll have probably 40, 50 people out there cleaning Balboa Park. So we all want you in the parade. I said we would have 50 to 100 people in the parade. I don't want to be a liar, but I also don't want to pressure and guilt you into doing anything. So I'm stuck, you know. But feel free to sign up if you want. We'd love to have you. We are number 26 on the map. All that means is it'll tell you where to go. The website will have all the information. We're going to meet at about 10 o'clock. Do you have an announcement?
Yeah, just if anybody has any questions about where and time and all that, it will be on the website. You can also ask me if you want to. And I hope you'll join us. It'll be a lot of fun. And
Tomorrow.
And tomorrow we're going to have a little poster making event at 3 o'clock in the dining area. So we will have some art supplies for as long as they last. So just come and help us make signs, and you can carry them, or just make a sign and somebody else will carry it. So, thank you.
Where do we meet for cleanup?
For the Monday?
Yes.
It'll all be sent out this week. You'll get an email, and it'll be on the website. It'll tell you exactly where to go for all of that. Yeah, definitely. But thank you for asking. It won't be here. We'll be meeting at Balboa Park. Yeah.